Hello everyone, this is Tim, and this is going to be part two of my Red Tide review. I've had a little bit of difficulty finding the time out to do these because of my son and stuff, but here we go. All right, so the next section is People of the Isles, and they have example characters for adventurers for each of these various races, and they're described. What is nice about the setting is that it would be very easy to import your own races because of the backdrop of the setting. Everything is collapsing. The red mist is basically swallowing everything up. So anything that could have existed in the world, you can have as a small settlement. You know, have some of those special snowflake type characters come from maybe like there's only like three left in the entire island. You can do all kinds of weird things like that. So it's flexible. You can bring in some other stuff if you'd like to, but they of course give you some of the races that they suggest. Um, so there's unique cultures in isolated areas. There's dwarves. They're traditional, except they would rather die than be slaves to their god. So they are essentially godless. The Mother Below is the name of their god, and it is said that they basically like destroyed her, and there's shards of her that you have to fight in the afterlife. So she isn't really destroyed all the way. So it has a nice little backdrop there. I guess I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the religion section. But there's supposedly 10,000 shards of her. They take gold with them to basically forge like these spiritual weapons in the afterlife, and gold is the only thing that can harm the Mother Below. So this is cool because it gives a reason for the traditional dwarf greed. So I thought that was kind of neat. Um, there's the Aaron Garters, and these are humans. They're basically big, blonde, and pale. They're monotheistic. They worship the Maker. They follow the law of the Iron Prophets, and they are renowned pikemen and soldiers. There are elves, and these elves are reincarnated, so there's only 100,000 souls. So you have to, I guess, wait for one to die to have another one. They can die by violence or disease. That's pretty much it. They join creeds that hope to work on some greater goal, but they're also not very religious. Half elves are elven souls born into human bodies, and they're also called scions. So I kind of like this idea for half elves. It's not the traditional, yeah, your mom was an elf, your dad was a human. It just your human body, you have human parents, and yet somehow this elven soul must have got lost and ended up in your body. So I thought that was kind of a cool take on half elves. The Eshkanti, the human merchants and traders of the old world. They sort of are Arab-like in looks. Lots of them survive. They have dark hair, eyes, and skin. The Gadal, they're dark mountain folk. They worship the night, sky, and the stars, and they are known to be astromancers. So that's kind of cool. Halflings, they've always lived with humans. They aren't intimidated easily. They're farmers, herdsmen, and they follow the quiet way. And the quiet way is sort of like a folksy, not really religious thing, but I guess like just folklore would be a good way to describe it. Maybe a little bit of maybe Buddhism in there, maybe to some limited extent. Imperials, they are from the ninefold celestial empire. They are slender. They have dark golden skin and dark almond eyes. And I'm probably gonna mispronounce this one. The Q, Kueh. Uh, they, with the Archmage Rai, founded the city of Kitta Minatu, and they worship the Hell Kings. So the Hell Kings are like these demonic entities, um, and by worshiping them, the worshippers think that when they get to like a hellish plane, they're going to be treated a little bit better than most people. So it's kind of sort of like a dark place in the islands there. Sort of, this would be like a good place to set like an evil campaign, I would think. The Shou, Shou, they are the natives on the islands, and they resemble like the orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, etc. From other fantasy settings. But in the secret section at the end of the book, they give you a little bit more detail on exactly what made them, how they got there. But I won't discuss that in the video. But yeah, they're kind of like beastmen, native in native sort of culture peoples. So, you could take this and use them in like a stereotypical D&D fashion where, yes, all the Shao are evil, you should kill them on sight, or you could go a little bit more complex version of that where they have legitimate reasons for their anger, a little bit more sympathetic towards them. So, think about that and run it the way you want. The Skander, they have black hair, pale skin, and they are sea raiders. They were slave to the dwarves in ancient days, and they're sort of Norse-like, and they're good builders. Next section of the book is Lay of the Land. The Acto, the Northern Islands, hosts the city-state of Nornheim and the dwarven holding of Angramir. Ektau is the southern island. It has the Hornburg, um, the Kitamanatu, Zion, Tianlung, and Alt Grimir. And these are all like big population centers. The whole place has like a subarctic, cool temperate, warm temperate, and subtropical climates and various levels of the island. How far north you go, how far south. It goes through wilderness encounters and varying chances when you would roll for them. So in certain areas you're going to have more random encounters than others. There's a pretty extensive black and white hex map of the islands. There's 4 of them. Um, the only complaint is that the key is a little small, so it's kind of hard to read. But it's pretty straightforward. It looks like a hexographer was used, and I like to use that myself. Various important places are described, and they have nice, concise descriptions of each area. All right, next section is State and Society. And it talks about how Xian was the first settlement. That's Xian. And the land was basically too rough for quick communications. And the seas are too perilous for easy trade. This caused distance from the Mandarin and Xian and his rule. So there's this first city, and then these other cultures come in and start forming other cities. Each domain is discussed in detail, and as you read it, you can really tell that the author spent a lot of time considering which word to use. So that was a lot of fun to read the descriptions. Institutions such as slavery, coinage, gender roles, and religion are discussed. All right, next section is Heroes of the Isles. Adventurers are generally viewed as violent, untrustworthy, lawless figures who are to be lauded for their usefulness in times of danger and sent on their way during other seasons. But that was a good quote from the book. The races and classes are discussed and how they fit into the setting, how they interrelate with one another. There's a new class, the Scion, which is the half-elf, and that's for Labyrinth Lord, and the Vowed, which is a martial artist. And there's also the Shao Witch. Next section is Red Sorcery. It's a discussion of magic, new spells, the Scion's weirds, so that's kind of neat, and the Shao Witch spells. So there's just more detail for some of the things he came up with. Ways to make magic items special, random creators of those magic items, discussion about how each culture would flavor a magic item, so they all do things in a little different way. And each culture describes weaponry, armor, potions, scrolls, wands, staves, and rods. So again, it goes into each of the detailed cultures and shows you how they each have their little different flavor with some of these things. And I'm actually going to pronounce, it's funny, I'm going to pronounce this word correctly this time in this video. The bestiary of the Isles. I'm learning. I'm like an old dog. It takes a while for me to learn how to pronounce things correctly. There's constructs, demons, hell kings, celestial devils, sort of like an angel of death. The Isle lizard folk, the ogres on the Isle, the Shao bugbear, goblin, hobgoblin, orc, and my favorite is the tide spawn. And these are created from the red mists and all the strange, horrible, horrible dreams that they get from the things lurking within. All right, it goes into a little bit of a religion discussion. It's in the state and society section. The gods seem more distant now than they once were before, especially since the red tide. They seem silent on what the red mist is or why it's happening. There's lots of different gods worshipped and spirits as well, because there's so many different cultures that have fled to the Sunset Isles. The native Shao and the refugees are all sort of trying to. I don't know if it's going for supremacy here, maybe in some instances, but they all just have their pockets of different beliefs. Uh, the use of colors with this one section is very cool for me. It talks about the nine immortals of the ninefold celestial empire, and they're the most widespread and worshipped deities on the Isles. Let's see here. Basically, the descriptions of the gods seem to have sort of absorbed any local deities from the mainland before they were brought here. So each of them has a little different flavor. There's Kusha, the red goddess, warfare and struggle. Fascia, the yellow god, law and integrity. Mimasa, Mima, let's see if I can pronounce this right. Mim Mimamsa, the blue goddess, learning and intellect. Sankaya, the gray god, mystical and magic. Srinrai, the white god, principle of ending and negation. I always like the word negation. That's a great sounding word. Kiga, the green goddess, becoming and transformation. Tendai, the black god, distortions and corruptions. Hesika, the vermilion goddess, perception and sensation. And Inru, the purple god, god that which is overlooked, god of that which is overlooked, and the blank spaces within any theological system. So this is sort of the miscellaneous god. If your domain is not covered by the other gods, they just throw it down to this guy. So sort of like that catch-all sort of category there. Um, each of these is served by devils and tulpas, and those are sort of like angels in some respects, I guess. They sort of aid and sort of help maintain the followers, where devils are sort of used in vengeance and destruction, the wrath of the god or goddess. The Skander gods, there's three of them. There's Sifr, the god of waves. Anghad, farming and mistress of the mountains. Hajal, the red-handed god of battle. And they have a sort of practical and common everyday sort of worship. It's very simple, and they're not a very religious culture. All right, some of the other gods, the Gadal peasants pray to destiny and liberty, sort of as these vague sort of concepts. Erengarders are they worship the Maker, which is monotheistic, and it's sort of set up to be the antithesis of this chaotic, formless evil. They follow sacred laws passed down by the Iron Prophets. They have a lot of detailed taboos and strictures on how they should live their life. The Eshkanti, they have a huge pantheon of gods, perhaps like the Hindu gods, and they sort of collect them in a way. So if they would come to a new local place and find a new deity from some far corner of the world that someone brought with them to the Sunset Isles, they would most likely adopt that into their pantheon. Kur, they have old culture that is lost to time, and they have sort of nature worship and meditation. And the Hell Kings, as I said, were basically the lords of hell, and you worship them so that in the afterlife things aren't as bad. Um, yeah, they basically want everyone to submit utterly to them and do whatever they want. And that's pretty much it. The godless races, as I mentioned, are the dwarves, the elves, and the halflings. And I pretty much went into all those. The dwarves do the mother below. The halflings have the quiet way, which is just sort of this common sense folklore-y type thing. Elves seek to equal the gods, and they use creeds and sorcery to bring forth their goals over many generations. And the elves, as I said, reincarnate. All right, probably stop there.